I remember the exact moment my husband Kenneth took his last breath. November 17th, 2018, years ago, 23 hours and 12 minutes. The sounds of the monitors in the hospital room faded, and a couple seconds later I was stunned into silence. 52 years together ended with one interrupted breath. The nurse said something soothing to me, but her words passed through me like a salve. I sat by his bedside for another 2 hours until the orderlies came to take the body away. A body. Not Kenneth's body. The body. I was 71 at the time, and I thought my life was ending too. In a way, it was. Cathedral City, our city, hadn't changed much over the decades. The same neat streets lined with sycamore trees, the same Victorian houses, painted and patched but still holding their dignity. Kenneth and I moved here in 1980 when he got a job as an engineer in a local factory. I was already working as an accountant and quickly found a position with Arcturus Construction. Our house on Oakill Avenue, one story, with a wide veranda and a small garden, witnessed our lives. The joys, sorrows, the birth of our son, his growing up. Kenneth had intended to do an addition when Hugh was born, but kept putting it off. And then Hugh grew up and went off to college. Now this house seems too big for just me. 5 rooms where my footsteps echo. After Kenneth's funeral, Hugh suggested I sell the house and move into an apartment or even a nursing home. Of course, so I wouldn't have to clean and garden, I declined. Every corner here holds memories, and the backyard is filled with roses that Kenneth and I planted the first year we lived here. I worked at Arcturus Construction for almost 30 years, rising to the position of chief accountant. The company was growing, absorbing small contractors, opening branches in neighboring cities. In 2010, when I turned 63, I formally retired, but remained a consultant. A couple of years later, I was approached by the owners of small firms with a request to conduct their accounting. Now I have 3 regular clients: a machine shop, a confectionery, and a landscaping company. I work remotely, traveling to them only once a month to reconcile documents. Kenneth sometimes joked that I don't know how to rest, but I love this job. The crisp numbers, the reconciled balances, the absolute clarity of debit and credit. In a world where everything is constantly changing, accounting remains an island of stability. Plus, it gives me an extra income, even though Kenneth and I have plenty of savings. We've always lived modestly, saving for our old age. Hugh, our only son, has inherited neither my taste for numbers nor his father's engineering acumen. At school, he studied average, went to the local college to specialize in business administration, but did not finish, dropped out in the second year, deciding that the theory does not interest him. He got a job at a warehouse as a forklift operator, then became a foreman. Kenneth was disappointed. He had hoped that his son would follow in his footsteps or at least get a full-fledged higher education. I was more worried about Hugh's personal life. He changed girls like a glove, could not settle down. Kenneth and I had already resigned ourselves to the idea that we would never have grandchildren, when suddenly, at the age of 32, Hugh announced that he was getting married. I didn't like Perry Brookwood, the woman he'd chosen. She was tall, gaunt, with thin lips, which she constantly pushes up, as if assessing everything around her and finding faults. At our first meeting, she took one look at our house, my clothes, the table setting, and was clearly not satisfied. The wedding was modest at City Hall, followed by a small reception at a restaurant. Kenneth grumbled about the prices, but I insisted we pay for everything. Hugh had just taken out a car loan and was barely making ends meet. A year after the wedding, Austin, our grandson, was born. The boy inherited his mother's frown, but otherwise he was a carbon copy of little Hugh, the same wispy wheat hair, the same stubborn chin. Perry had quit her job at the clothing store, determined to devote herself to raising her son. At least that's what she said. In reality, Austin spent most of his time with a live-in nanny, while Perry met with friends at cafes or went shopping. 3 years ago, in 2022, Hugh and Perry decided to buy a house. Before that, they had rented an apartment in a new building on the outskirts of the city, an expensive, modern renovation, but Perry still considered it a temporary place. She wanted her own house, with a front lawn and a backyard for barbecues. They found a suitable option in an upscale neighborhood, a 2-story, 4-bedroom, 2-car garage, a small pool. The price, of course, was appropriate. Hugh, being only a foreman in a warehouse, could not count on such a mortgage. Plus, he didn't have the best credit history. A couple of student loan defaults, plus that car loan, which he'd refinanced twice. And that's when they came to me. Not asking, but rather putting me on the spot to be a guarantor on their mortgage. Mom, it's just a formality, Hugh said, sitting at my kitchen table, twirling a cup of tea in his hands. The bank requires additional guarantees. You realize you have a perfect credit history, decent savings. You don't have to pay anything, just sign the papers. Perry sat next to me, not touching her tea, looking at her watch, showing me she had better things to do than sit in my kitchen. Kenneth was still alive then, but he was very sick. Stage 4 lung cancer. He was sitting in his chair in the living room, tired from another round of chemotherapy, and he could hear the conversation. "Elspeth?" he called to me as I walked Hugh and Perry to the door. "Don't do that. I've got a bad feeling about this." But I didn't listen. Hugh was our only child, and it was always hard for me to say no to him. I signed all the necessary papers without even going into detail. After all, I was an accountant with 30 years of experience, and financial documents shouldn't have been a problem for me. But at the time, all my thoughts were on Kenneth, on his treatment, on how much time we had left together. Hugh and Perry bought a house, moved in. At first, Perry even invited us to visit, to show off the new furniture, to show us how she had organized Austin's nursery. Kenneth had trouble getting around, so I traveled alone. The house was really beautiful, but in my opinion, it was too fancy for a family with such a modest income. My life in those months turned into endless going to hospitals, consultations with doctors, procedures, medications. Kenneth was fading before my eyes, and no amount of experimental treatments could stop the disease. Hugh stopped by once a week, usually without Perry and Austin. "The baby has allergies. He can't be in the house with a sick person," she said. I pretended to believe it. And then Kenneth died, and the world stood still for a while. Hugh took charge of the funeral arrangements, and I was grateful to him for that. Perry stood stone-faced at the funeral ceremony, not shedding a tear, although she and Kenneth had never been close. 6 months passed. I was slowly getting my life back on track, working with my clients again, occasionally meeting my former colleagues from Arcturus for lunch. One of those days, I just finished reviewing the quarterly report for the candy store. The phone rang. "Mom?" Hugh's voice sounded tense. "Can I come over? I need to talk to you." He arrived an hour later, alone, without Perry. He looked gaunt, dark circles under his eyes. "I've been downsized," he blurted out as soon as he stepped through the door. "The company is closing our warehouse and moving all operations to a neighboring state where taxes are lower." I offered him tea and sat him at the table. Hugh drummed his fingers nervously on the tabletop. "We're having trouble with the mortgage, Mom. I've been looking for a job for the last 2 months, but nothing suitable. Everyone's offering half the salary I was getting, and the house payment is big, you know that." I knew it. $32,000 a year, almost $3,000 a month. That's an exorbitant amount for a middle-income family. "Perry could get a job," I suggested cautiously. Hugh shook his head. "She says Austin needs his mother around. Besides, she'd have to pay almost as much for a nanny as she could earn." We both knew those were excuses. Perry didn't want to work, that's all. "Mom," Hugh looked up at me, his eyes a mixture of shame and hope. "Could you help us with the payments? At least temporarily, until I get a proper job." The bank had already sent a notice of default, and they could start foreclosing on the house in a couple of months. I looked at my son, a 37-year-old man, the father of the family, and I saw in him the same indecisive boy who was always looking for the easy way out, who dropped out of college because it was too hard, who changed jobs as soon as they demanded more effort. "Of course I'll help," I said. "How much do you need?" $3,000 a month. It won't take long, I promise." "I'm already in the final interview with a company." I nodded. It wasn't an impossible amount for me. Kenneth and I had a lot of savings left, plus I had a pension and an income from bookkeeping. Yes, $3,000 a month was substantial, but not critical to my budget. "All right, I'll transfer the money to your account every first day." Hugh hugged me, thanked me, assured me that it would be 3 or 4 months at most. I didn't believe it, of course, but I kept quiet. After all, this is my son, my blood. And I'm the guarantor on their mortgage. If they can't cope with the payments, I'll be in trouble too. So began this period in my life, when I was actually supporting my adult son's family, thinking it was a temporary measure. How wrong I was. It's been 10 months since the day I started paying Hugh and Perry's mortgage. It's late February outside my window. The branches of the maple tree outside my window are covered with the first swollen buds. The morning begins as usual. I wake up at 6:30, make myself a cup of coffee, watch the news on my tablet. Quarterly statements are due today from Jenkins, the owner of the auto repair shop, so it's going to be a busy day. I open the banking app, check my bills, and notice that the automatic payment on Hugh's mortgage is safely gone. $3,000 every month. I didn't pay much attention to it at first. 3 to 4 months, as Hugh had promised, didn't seem like a big deal. Besides, I could really afford it. A pension, plus fees from my clients, plus savings. I had a financial cushion that many could only dream of. In my 78 years, I wasn't planning on traveling the world or buying a new car. But Hugh never found a high-paying job. 3 months after our conversation, he took a job as an operator in another warehouse, but at almost half the salary. When I cautiously asked him if he would now be able to cope with the mortgage on his own, he waved his hands. Mom, it's only temporary. I'm on probation, then the salary will increase. Besides, we have accumulated other debts for those months when I did not work. Credit cards, utility bills, just a little more help, please. And I kept paying, month after month. Sometimes I thought I was doing them a bearish favor, teaching them to be dependent, creating the illusion that they could always rely on their mother. But then I thought of little Austin, my only grandson, and the thought of losing his home was unbearable. One warm April day, I decided to stop by unannounced. I just missed my grandson, and I had baked a homemade pie with apples and cinnamon, just the way Hugh likes it. As I drove up to their house, I noticed a brand new SUV in the driveway, a silver Ford Explorer, still shiny, with dealer stickers on the back window. I parked behind it, grabbed a pie, and headed for the front door. Perry opened it. Annoyance flashed across her face, but she quickly put on a smile. Elspeth! What a surprise. We weren't expecting company. I was just passing through, so I thought I'd drop in. I baked Hugh his favorite pie. She reluctantly stepped aside to let me into the house. Austin was playing in the living room, a 6-year-old boy with a mop of blonde hair who was busy building something out of a construction kit. He looked up, saw me, and exclaimed joyfully, "Grandma!" I leaned over to hug him and noticed that the constructor was new, a huge set with many parts. Judging by the box, cost at least $200. "Look what my dad bought me!" Austin pointed to the box. "There are 1,000 parts." "It's really pretty," I smiled. "Where's Dad?" "He's in the garage working on his new car," Perry answered. "Would you like some coffee?" I nodded and went into the kitchen. I noticed a few other new things on the way. A big flat-screen TV in the living room, a new couch, obviously expensive leather. "I see you've done some updating," I said, setting the pie on the table. Perry shrugged. "You've got to make a living." The old couch was awfully uncomfortable, and the TV, well, it was a Christmas present from my parents. I didn't mention that I'd seen their old couch, which was a decent couch, much newer than the one I had at home, and that Perry's parents, as far as I knew, were middle class and could hardly afford such a generous gift. Hugh came in wiping his hands with a rag. "Mother, what are you doing here?" He hugged me and I could smell the familiar scent of his cologne, the expensive one I'd given him last birthday. "I thought I'd come by and check up on you. I see you have a new car." Hugh was visibly embarrassed. "Yes, I had to get one. The old one was a wreck and I had to get to work. His old car was only 5 years old, and the last time I saw it, it was in perfect condition." "How did you manage to buy such a car?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "We took out a loan," Perry interjected. "It was a good deal, and the dealer offered a good trade-in discount for the old car. I didn't say anything. A new loan when they can barely keep up with the mortgage? When I'm paying their rent so they don't lose the roof over their heads?" We drank coffee, ate pie, Hugh talking about his job, Perry talking about the new classes she signed Austin up for. He goes swimming twice a week, soccer, and we've also started music lessons, piano. He's clearly got a knack for it. I knew how much those classes cost in Cathedral City. It's not cheap, especially when you add it all up. What about kindergarten? I asked. Does Austin still go to the same one? No, we moved him to Oakbridge, Perry said with a hint of pride. It's a private language school. They even teach Mandarin from the age of 4. Oakbridge was the most expensive preschool in town. I remembered the brochure Perry had shown me once. $25,000 a year for the preschool program. How do you pay for all that? I couldn't bear to ask a direct question. There was an awkward pause in the room. Hugh stared into his cup, and Perry smiled strainedly. We manage. We're saving on something else. What exactly they were saving on was unclear. A new car, expensive clubs, private kindergarten, new furniture. And they still couldn't pay the mortgage on their own. I stayed with them for another hour, played with Austin, helped him build a tower out of a construction kit. He was a wonderful boy, inquisitive, kind, with an open smile. Too bad we didn't see each other much. Perry was always making excuses for why I shouldn't come, and when I suggested that they stop by, they always had other plans. As I drove away, I took another look at the new Ford. Maybe I was being too hard on them? Maybe the car was really necessary for Hugh's work, but something inside me told me I was just being used. The next few months went by at a regular pace. I worked with clients, occasionally met with my girlfriends, and every first day I transferred money to Hugh's account. Sometimes he called to thank me. More often, he forgot. In June, Perry posted in the social network photos of their family vacation in the mountains. They rented a chalet for the weekend, riding mountain bikes, roasting barbecue. Hugh, Perry, and Austin were all smiling for the camera, with the stunning mountain scenery as a backdrop. I knew these places. Kenneth and I had traveled there once. Chalet rentals were decently priced, especially in season. I didn't comment or ask anything. After all, it was their life, their choice how to spend their money. But the worm of doubt gnawed at me more and more. In July, Hugh called to tell me in passing that they needed extra help. Mom, we had an unexpected expense. Perry had to fly to her parents' house. Her father had been hospitalized. The one-way tickets cost almost $800. And Austin needs surgery on his adenoids, which insurance doesn't cover. I wired him another $2,000 without asking any questions. If Perry's father was really sick, and if my grandson needed surgery, how could I say no? A week later, new photos appeared on the same social networking site. Perry and her friends at a spa hotel, with glasses of champagne wearing white robes. The geotag pointed to an expensive resort 2 hours away from Cathedral City. Not a word about a sick father or a trip to visit his parents. Something shivered inside me. I sat in front of my computer screen looking at those pictures and felt a wave of anger rise in me that I hadn't felt in years. They had lied to me, used me, extorted money under false pretenses, playing on my feelings. In August, exactly a year after I'd started paying their mortgage, I decided to have a straight talk with Hugh. I invited him over for lunch, specifically when Perry was supposed to be at her yoga class, which she had also posted about on social media. Hugh arrived alone, as I'd requested. He looked tense, like he was anticipating an unpleasant conversation. I cooked his favorite roast, baked an apple pie. We ate lunch, talking about the weather, about work, about Austin. Then as I poured the tea, I finally brought up the subject that had been bothering me. Hugh, I wanted to talk about your financial situation. He visibly tensed, but nodded. Of course, Mom. It's been a year since I started helping you with your mortgage. You said it would be temporary for 3 or 4 months. Yeah, but things have changed. The salary isn't what I thought it would be, and the expenses. I've seen your expenses, I interrupted him. A new car, a vacation in the mountains, a private daycare for Austin, a spa weekend for Perry. Hugh blushed. Mom, you don't understand. The car was a necessity. The old one kept breaking down, and the daycare was an investment in Austin's future. As for vacations, everybody's entitled to a little fun, right? They do, I agreed. But not at the expense of others. I'm helping you pay your rent so you don't end up on the street, and you're spending money on things that aren't exactly necessities. We'll pay it all back. Hugh looked me in the eye with the same expression he used to give me when I was a kid, promising to fix a failing math test. As soon as I get a promotion. When will that be? I asked. And why can't Perry go to work? Austin is already at school most of the day. She's looking for something suitable, Hugh replied uncertainly. It's just a tough job market right now, and with her qualifications. She has a bachelor's degree in communications, as I recall, and retail experience. Can't you find any work? Hugh was silent, fiddling with his teaspoon. I can't keep paying your mortgage indefinitely, I said gently. I'm 78 years old, Hugh. Yes, I have savings, but I have to think about my future. About medical expenses, which are only likely to increase. Mom, please. He finally looked at me. Just a little more. We've already discussed with Perry that she'll look for a job more actively. And I'm in line for a promotion. Just give us a little more time. I sighed. All of this I'd heard before. Okay, I said after a pause. I'll keep helping for 3 more months. But in that time, you have to find a way to manage on your own. Either Perry gets a job, or you sell the car and buy something cheaper, or look for a house with a lower mortgage. Hugh brightened up. Thanks, Mom. We'll manage, I promise. 3 months, and we'll be completely independent. I nodded, but inside I felt that this promise, like the previous ones, would remain unfulfilled. And so it was. 3 months passed. Perry hadn't found a job, or rather, she wasn't even looking for one, judging by the fact that she kept posting pictures of her daytime shopping trips and meetings with her friends. Hugh didn't get a promotion. They didn't sell the car. And I continued to pay their mortgage. Every time I tried to bring it up, Hugh would make excuses, and Perry would accuse me of greed. Elspeth, you're a single woman with a good pension and savings. What do you need all that money for? You don't even have any expensive hobbies. And we are a family. We are raising a child. He needs better education, conditions. I bit my tongue to keep from harshly answering her. After all, she was the mother of my only grandchild. But every such conversation left a bitter residue. In November, Perry posted pictures again. She and Hugh and Austin at a ski resort. New equipment, an instructor, a luxury chalet. The caption read, "Best weekend ever. Finally got out for a family vacation." I looked at those pictures for a long time. The happy faces of my family, the expensive jackets, the new skis. And I thought about the fact that at this very moment I was looking at my budget, figuring out if I could afford to fix the leaky roof on my porch, or if I would have to put it off until spring. That's when I realized I wasn't just being used. I was seen as an ATM that was supposed to keep them comfortable while they enjoyed all the pleasures of life, and that no amount of talking would help. They would promise, make excuses, accuse me of greed, but nothing would change. I was not a beloved mother and grandmother to them, but only a source of funding, and it was breaking my heart. The beginning of December in Cathedral City is always special. The town transforms, garlands on the trees along Main Street, Christmas wreaths on doors, storefronts decorated with special care. Kenneth and I used to love to walk around town in the evening these days, admiring the lights, going to the little coffee shop on the corner of Maple Street where they served ginger cinnamon lattes. Now I walk alone. Sometimes I see Marjorie, my longtime friend and former colleague from Arcturus Construction, but she recently had hip surgery and is having trouble getting around. So most of the time I just wander the familiar streets, watching the hustle and bustle around me, the young families picking out trees, the kids gawking at the Christmas displays. Christmas always seemed to me to be a family holiday. Even after Kenneth died, I tried to get Hugh, Perry, and Austin around the table. I cooked the traditional dinner, turkey with cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie. Gave gifts, especially delighted by her grandson's delight when he unwrapped another box. Christmas hadn't been like this the last 2 years. The year before last, they'd only come for an hour. Perry had explained that they had dinner plans with her parents. Last year, they didn't come at all, citing Austin's cold. I took the presents to their house, but wasn't even invited in. Perry picked up the packages at the door, thanked me in a cursive voice, and slammed the door shut before I could even see my grandson. This year, I decided to do things differently. If the mountain doesn't go to Muhammad. I spent almost 2 weeks picking out gifts. For Austin, a new tablet he'd been wanting with drawing apps and educational games. For Hugh, an expensive wristwatch, stylish and solid, that I spotted in a jewelry store window. For Perry, a set of premium cosmetics that she mentioned in a conversation with a friend. Yes, I sometimes looked at her social media page, I repent. These were not cheap gifts. The total amount was almost $3,000, the same amount I was paying them each month for their mortgage. But I wanted to make them happy, to show them that I wasn't just thinking of them in the context of financial aid, that I just loved them and wanted to be a part of their lives. On December 13th, I wrapped all the gifts beautifully, put them in a big bag, and called Hugh to find out when I could stop by. Mom, it's not a good time. His voice sounded distant. We have a little work emergency before the holidays, and Perry's busy with Austin's Christmas play at school. I understand, dear, but I'd like to bring your presents and maybe talk about Christmas plans. I was thinking you could come to my house for dinner on the 24th like you used to. Let me call you back later, okay? I have to run to a meeting. He disconnected before I finished listening. I sighed and put the phone away. Typical Hugh, avoiding uncomfortable conversations, putting off decisions. It had always been like that, ever since I was a kid. He didn't call back until 3 days later, and that was after I reminded him in a message. I'm sorry, Mom, I've been so busy. You asked me about Christmas. Yes, I wanted to invite you to dinner, and I've got some presents ready for you. I'd like to drop them off in advance. About the presents, you can drop them off any day. We're almost always home in the evenings. And about Christmas, let me talk to Perry and get back to you, okay? I said yes. At least he didn't say no right away, which was good. The next day, I decided not to wait for the call and go over there myself with the presents. It was Sunday, and I was sure I'd find the whole family at home. Indeed, everyone was there. Hugh was fiddling with garland in the yard, decorating the bushes in front of the house. Perry and Austin were hanging toys on the huge Christmas tree in the living room, a real one, judging by the smell of pine needles that filled the house. Grandma! Austin rushed over to me as soon as I crossed the threshold. Look at our tree! Daddy says it's the biggest one in our neighborhood. I hugged my grandson, inhaling the smell of his hair apple-scented shampoo and something subtly childlike and clean. It's a beautiful tree, I agreed. And how beautifully you dress it up. Perry nodded at me, but didn't come up for a hug. She continued hanging the toys expensive, obviously new, in the same style, red and gold. I brought you presents, I said, setting the bag down by the tree. You can open it on Christmas Day or before, as you wish. Thank you, Elspeth. Perry finally looked away from the tree. That's very kind of you. There was no real gratitude in her voice, but rather a formal politeness. I'm used to that tone. Austin jumped to the package. Can I see what's in there? Not now, honey. Perry stopped him. Presents are opened at Christmas. It's tradition. Actually, I smiled, I don't mind if Austin opens his present now. I'd like to see his reaction. Perry pressed her lips together but didn't argue. Austin squealed with delight as he began to unpack the box containing the tablet. His eyes widened when he saw the contents. Wow, that's exactly what I wanted, with a drawing pen and everything. Thank you, Grandma. He rushed over to hug me, and I felt my heart grow warm. Moments like this were worth splurging for. Perry looked at the box, and an expression flashed across her face that I couldn't decipher, either envy or annoyance. That's very generous, Elspeth, she said. But Austin and I had agreed that he wouldn't get the tablet until after the end of the school year if he got good grades. Oh, I'm sorry, I said, really embarrassed. I didn't know. Hugh hadn't mentioned. It's okay, Hugh intervened, who was just coming in from the street. Austin's doing well enough. He deserves the award. Perry gave him a disapproving look but didn't say anything. Austin was already turning on his tablet, squirming impatiently on the couch. What about Christmas? I asked, changing the subject. Hugh said you'd discuss whether you could come to my house for dinner on the 24th. There was a pause. Hugh and Perry exchanged glances. Actually, Hugh began uncertainly, we've already made plans. What plans? I felt something clench inside me. We've decided to celebrate Christmas at home this year, Perry answered in her husband's place. Just our family. Austin is old enough to make his own traditions. I could come over, I suggested. I'll cook dinner as usual. No, Elspeth, Perry shook her head. Her voice hardened. You're not invited to Christmas. We want to spend it with just our family. I felt those words physically, like a slap in the face. You're not invited. Just your family. Like I was an outsider, a stranger, not my mother and grandmother. What Perry means, Hugh hastened to intervene, seeing my face, is that we'd like to organize everything ourselves this time. You see, in the past years, we've always fitted in with other people's plans, either yours or Perry's parents. And now we want to do our own thing. I understand, I said quietly, though I didn't really understand at all. How could I exclude my grandmother from a family celebration? How can you talk about your family without including your mother and grandmother? Why don't we meet the next day? Hugh suggested. On the 25th, we'll stop by your place for tea. I nodded, but I was seething inside. Tea. Like a distant acquaintance who needed a courtesy visit. Sure, I'll be waiting. The rest of the visit passed in a strained atmosphere. Perry spent most of her time in the kitchen, clattering dishes louder than necessary. Hugh awkwardly tried to keep the conversation going, asking me about my health, my job, my holiday plans. Only Austin was genuinely happy to see me, showing me what he'd already drawn on his new tablet. As I left, I took one more look at their Christmas tree. Huge, perfectly decorated, like a picture from a magazine. And I thought that my little artificial tree, the one Kenneth and I had bought back in the 80s, might have to be done alone this year. At home, I sat at the kitchen table and stared out the window for a long time at the thickening dusk. You're not invited to Christmas. After all I'd done for them. After all the money I'd given away so they could live in their beautiful home, drive their new car, vacation in the mountains, I felt used and discarded, like an unwanted item. A tool to get money out of the ATM. That's what I was to them. And now, when it came to real family intimacy, to the holiday, I was pushed aside. Something broke in me at that moment. Some last thread that tied me to the image of a caring mother who forgives and understands. The next day, I called Hugh. He didn't pick up. I left a message asking him to call me back. He didn't. A day later, I called again. This time he answered, but his voice sounded like he was uncomfortable talking to me. Mom, I'm really busy right now. Is it urgent? I wanted to talk about what Perry said about Christmas. Oh, that. He sighed. Look, don't take it personally. Perry can be a little harsh sometimes, you know. She didn't mean to hurt you. But she did, Hugh, and you didn't even stand up for me. Mom, it's just a holiday. We said we'd come to your house on the 25th. It's not about the holiday. I was trying to find the words. It's about attitude. I've been helping you financially for almost a year. I pay for your house so you can live comfortably. And then Perry tells me I'm not part of your family? She didn't say that. Hugh was outraged. You're being dramatic. You're not invited to Christmas. We want to spend it with just our family. Those are her direct words, Hugh. If I'm not part of your family, what am I? Mom, come on. I'm at work. I don't have time for this. Honestly, Hugh, I felt a lump growing in my throat. Do you and Perry appreciate my help at all? Or is it something you take for granted? Of course we do, he sounded annoyed. But that doesn't mean you get to dictate how we live or how we spend our holidays. I'm not dictating anything. I just want to be a part of my son and grandson's life. You are. But we have our own lives, you know? Our own family. What about the mortgage? I asked you straight out. Is that part of your life, too? Mom, his voice turned cold. If it's too much for you to help us, just say so. We'll find another way to solve this problem. Like what? I don't know. We could refinance the loan. Or find a cheaper house. You've been saying that for a year and nothing changes. That's because it's a tough market. He was practically yelling. You think I enjoy asking you for money every month? Judging by how easy you make it look, yes. There was a pause. I could hear his heavy breathing. You know what, Mom? Let's end this conversation. You're obviously not in the mood, and neither am I. We'll talk when we've both cooled off. And he disconnected without waiting for my response. I sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling a wave of bitterness and anger rising inside. He hadn't even apologized for what Perry had said. Didn't even try to understand how I was feeling. It all came down to money, if it's a burden for you to help us. In that moment, I made a decision. Cold, calculating, maybe even cruel. But I felt it was the only way to reach them, to show them reality. I opened my banking app and canceled the automatic mortgage payment that was due to go out the 1st of January. then blocked the ability to debit my account by putting a limit on the amount. I knew where this would lead. Hugh and Perry already had loan delinquencies before I started helping. Another one, especially a large one, could be the last straw for the bank. They could have started foreclosure proceedings, and then. But at that point, I didn't care. Let them feel what it's like to be unsupported. Let them realize that you can't treat a person like an ATM machine and then throw them out of your life. You're not invited to Christmas. These words sounded like a judgment in my head, and my response was simple. And you're not invited to my wallet. I closed the app and turned my phone off. There was an emptiness inside. I knew I was probably making a mistake that would cost my son and his family a roof over their heads. But after months of humiliation, lies, and neglect, the cup of my patience had overflowed. After all, I was only human, tired, lonely, and very, very hurt. January in Cathedral City was unusually cold. Snow, a rare visitor to our land, fell twice, covering the streets in a white blanket for days. I love snow. It reminds me of my childhood in Minnesota, where winters were real, with snowdrifts taller than me and frosty patterns on the windows. I spent Christmas alone, cooked myself a small turkey, opened a bottle of good wine that Kenneth and I were saving for a special occasion. I looked at old family albums Hugh as a child, our trips together, the last Christmas with Kenneth. It was sad, but also peaceful. No strained smiles, no fake delight at the presents, no feeling that I was an extra at this celebration of life. On December 25th, Hugh didn't come as promised, for tea. I waited all day, made cinnamon pie, his favorite. By evening, it was clear no one would show up. I sent a short message, waiting for you for tea, as agreed. There was no reply. On the 26th, I called myself. Perry answered the phone. "Oh, Elspeth," she said, her voice not even feigned warmth. "Hugh can't come, he's busy with Austin." "You promised you'd stop by yesterday," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "I've been waiting all day." "Oh, I'm sorry. It slipped my mind. We had so much to do after Christmas. Perry's parents coming over, friends with their kids, so there was time for everyone but me." "I see," I said. "How was Christmas?" "Oh, it was great. Austin was thrilled with the presents. You saw his tablet and we got him a new bike and a game console. He was happy. I didn't say anything. The video game console, the new bike, it all cost a lot of money. Money they said they didn't even have enough for a mortgage." "Did you like my present?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "Oh, we hadn't opened the adult gifts yet. Decided to save it for later when we're calmer." Lies. That's a lie. I've seen pictures on social media. Perry with a new designer scarf. Not my gift. Hugh with some headphones. They opened their gifts a long time ago too. They just weren't interested in mine. "Tell Hugh to call me back when he's free," I said, and hung up without waiting for an answer. He didn't call back that day or the next. On December 31st, New Year's Eve, I received a short message from him. "Happy New Year, Mom. Wishing you health and all the best for the new year." No mention of the missed visit, no apology. And on January 1st, the usual payment on their mortgage didn't leave my account. I knew this because I specifically checked on the app. The system was showing that the automatic payment had been canceled on my order. I expected an immediate response, a call, a text, maybe even a visit. But nothing happened. Not on the 2nd of January, not on the 3rd, not on the following days. Either they didn't notice that the money hadn't arrived, or they decided that it was some temporary error that would resolve itself. Life went on. I went about my business, bookkeeping clients, meeting with girlfriends, going to concerts of the local symphony orchestra. The snow melted, replaced by freezing rain. I tried not to think about Hugh, Perry, and Austin, but it didn't always work. Especially at night, when I'd wake up and lie in the dark, wondering if I'd done the right thing. Maybe I should have just talked to them again. Explain how Perry's words had hurt me? But I knew it was useless. We'd talked many times before and nothing had changed. They took my help for granted, and I was an annoying nuisance in their perfect lives. In mid-January, I noticed that Perry had stopped posting pictures on social media. She used to post something almost every day. Their family breakfasts, Austin's new outfits, her shopping trips. Now her account was silent. I thought maybe they had noticed the lack of payment after all, and were now trying to fix the problem on their own. On January 25th, exactly 1 month after the failed tip visit, I got the call. I was just finishing a quarterly report for the pastry shop and didn't pick up the phone right away. When I did answer, I heard Hugh's excited voice. Mother! At last! This is the third time I've called you. Hello, Hugh. I tried to speak calmly. I was working, so I didn't hear the call. Mom, we're in trouble. Serious problems. I didn't say anything, waiting for it to continue. The bank sent a notice of the beginning of the foreclosure procedure, he blurted out. They say we missed 2 payments in a row, and given our previous history, they have the right to take the house. So they did miss the February payment, too. I wonder what they were counting on, that the money would somehow magically come out of my account anyway? I checked my bank account, Hugh continued, panic in his voice. Your transfers had stopped. The last one was in December. Mom, what's going on? Why did you stop paying? Don't you have any idea? I asked quietly. What? He seemed genuinely puzzled. No, I don't. We were counting on that money, Hugh. You know we can't cover the mortgage all by ourselves. I was counting on you coming to see me at Christmas too, at least on the 25th as promised. But you didn't. You didn't even call. Is that what this is about? There was disbelief in his voice. You stopped paying our mortgage because we didn't stop for tea? No, Hugh. I stopped paying your mortgage because your wife told me to my face that I wasn't part of your family, and you didn't even contradict her. Mom, those were just words. That's not what Perry meant. What did she mean when she said, you're not invited to Christmas. We want to spend it with just our family? He stammered. It was a tense moment. We all say things we don't mean. But you really didn't invite me over for Christmas, and you didn't come on the 25th like you promised. So it wasn't just words, it was your actual actions. Mom, this is no time to get into a fight. His voice broke into a scream. We're being evicted from the house. Do you understand? We could be on the street. Not on the street, Hugh. In a rented apartment like most people your age. Did you do this on purpose? There was shock in his voice. Did you stop paying on purpose to get us evicted? I sighed. I stopped paying because I realized I was just a source of money to you. Not a mother, not a grandmother, but an ATM machine. And you know what? ATMs malfunction sometimes too. Mom, we're being evicted, he screamed again. Us, your son, your grandson, how can you be so heartless? How could you be so heartless to me? I asked. All year long you took my money, lived large, bought new cars, went to resorts. And when it came to simple human contact, to a family holiday, you turned your back on me. You're not invited. Remember those words? It was Perry, he said in a low tone. You know how she is. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mom. But you didn't stop her. You didn't object. You didn't insist that I be with you on Christmas Day. And then you didn't come to see me like you promised. I was busy. We had company. You'll always have an excuse, Hugh. Always. Ever since you were a kid. It's not your fault you failed your exams. It's not your fault you dropped out of college. It's not your fault you lost your job. And now, of course, it's not your fault you're on the verge of eviction. Whose fault do you think it is, then? He raised his voice again. Yours. You stopped paying, knowing we couldn't handle it on our own. And why can't you manage on your own, Hugh? You're 38 years old. You have a job. Perry could have a job too, but she'd rather sit at home and spend money. You live in a house you can't afford. Why should I pay for your unwise financial decisions? Because you're my mother! He was almost crying. Mothers help their children. Yes, they do, but they don't keep healthy adults who don't even appreciate that help. There was a pause. I could hear his heavy breathing. What do you want me to do? He finally asked more quietly. I'll apologize for Christmas. We'll all apologize. It was wrong. But please help us with the mortgage. Just this once. We'll find a way, I promise. Maybe sell the house and buy something smaller, or maybe Perry will get a job. Same promises as a year ago, I said. Nothing changes, Hugh. It will. I swear. Just give us another chance. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to give up, to transfer the money to solve their problem. After all, this is my son, my flesh and blood, and Austin, my favorite grandson. But the other part, the more rational part, realized that it would only be a temporary solution. In a month or two, things would go back to normal. They would take my help for granted, and they would continue to keep me at a distance. I need to think about it, I said finally. I'll call you back. Mom, we don't have time. The bank is giving us 2 weeks to pay off the debt or they'll start full foreclosure proceedings. I said I'll call you back, Hugh. I hung up, feeling my hands shaking. It had been one of the hardest conversations of my life. Not 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was Perry. How could you? She didn't even say hello. How could you do this to your own son? Hello, Perry? I tried to stay calm. I was just about to think it over. There's nothing to think about, she interrupted me. You've got to pay off that debt right now. This is all your fault. My fault? My composure began to evaporate. Weren't you the one who told me, you're not invited to Christmas? We want to spend it with just our family? Oh my God, you're doing it again. It was just a holiday. It was a big deal. And now we're talking about our house. It was a big deal to me, Perry. I spent Christmas alone because my family decided they didn't need me. Dramatizing as usual, she snorted. You're 78 years old. You should be used to kids growing up and living their own lives. Sure, I agreed. But usually grown children don't ask their elderly parents to pay their rent. You offered to help, Perry exclaimed. No one forced you to do anything. Yes, I did. Because I loved you and wanted to help you in your time of need. But I didn't sign up for a lifetime of support from a family that doesn't even consider me a part of it. You're doing this out of spite. There was anger in her voice. You're taking revenge for some imaginary grudge. They're not imaginary, Perry. They're real. And this isn't about revenge. It's about me finally realizing that you're using me. You only want my money, not me. That's not true, she was practically screaming. Austin loves you. Hugh loves you. You're the one who's ruined everything with your grudges and resentments. If Hugh loves me, why didn't he come to see me at Christmas? Why didn't he call me? Why didn't he even apologize afterwards? He had things to do. We all had things to do. What business is more important than family, Perry? Didn't you talk about the importance of family when you refused to invite me to the party? She was silent for a moment, then changed her tactics. Look, Elspeth, I realize you're offended. Perhaps I was too harsh. I apologize for that. I do. But we're talking about your grandson's welfare here. You want Austin to be homeless? Have to change schools, lose friends? That's a low blow. She knew exactly how much I love Austin. You don't have to be homeless, I said. You could rent an apartment, or sell your new car and pay off the debt, or I don't know, maybe you should get a job after all. How dare you? Perry flared up again. I'm a mother. I'm raising a child. That's a job too, you know. Austin is 6 years old now. He's in school all day. And you have a nanny who picks him up after school. So don't give me any stories about the hard work of motherhood. You're just jealous, Perry blurted out. You're jealous that Hugh and I have a happy family and you're a lonely old woman. I felt something inside me finally break. The last link I had with these people. I think this is the end of our conversation, I said icily. Tell Hugh I've made my decision. I won't be paying off your debt. Work out your financial problems on your own as adults should. You're going to regret this, Perry screamed. You'll never see Austin again, ever. It's your decision, I replied. And it only confirms that it's mine. I hung up and turned off the phone. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was going to jump out of my chest. I went into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and drank it slowly. Then I sat at the table and stared out the window, at the bare maple branches swaying in the February wind. I felt devastated, but at the same time a strange calm descended upon me. For the first time in a long time, I acted not like a mother who would do anything for her child, but like a person who respected herself and her boundaries. They called me heartless, cruel, vindictive. Maybe they're right about some things, but wasn't it cruel of them to exclude me from the family circle while continuing to take my money? Wasn't it heartless to forget their promise to come over without even calling to apologize? In the days that followed, the phone was bursting with calls. Hugh, Perry, even numbers I didn't know. Perhaps they'd asked friends to call me. I didn't answer. I needed time to come to my senses, to solidify my decision. On the 5th day after our conversation, the doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and saw Hugh. He looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, his hair disheveled. I opened the door, Mom, he stepped toward me. We have to talk. I led him into the house. He went into the kitchen and sat down at the table, the same table where he used to do his homework, eat breakfast before school, talk about his first crushes. The bank's no joke, he said without preamble. They'll really take the house if we don't pay off the debt by the end of the week. What do you plan to do? I asked, sitting down across from him. I don't have that kind of money, Mom. 6,000 plus penalties. I tried to get a loan, but they turned me down because of my bad credit history. There's no point in selling the car, it's on credit, and we'll get a pittance when it's paid off. And Perry? She can't get a job? She tried. He averted his eyes, and I realized it was a lie. But without experience, she hasn't been hired in the last few years. Or they're offering salaries so low they can't even afford a nanny. So the only way out is me, I summarized. Again, Mom, I know you're upset, and you have every right to be. What we did to you was wrong, but please don't punish Austin for our mistakes. He loves his home, his room. He's got friends in the neighborhood. He's got school nearby. Hugh. I looked him straight in the eye. Do you realize you're asking me to start paying your mortgage again? Not just to pay off the arrears, but to continue making the monthly payments. Because I know for a fact that you can't make it on your own. He's got his head down. We'll figure something out. Maybe we can refinance the loan on more favorable terms. Or maybe I'll get a job with a better paycheck. Same promises, Hugh. I've been hearing the same thing for a year now. But this time it's going to be different. I swear it. We'll come and see you every weekend. We'll call you every day. Austin can stay overnight. And Perry? What would she say to that? He's confused. She's okay with it. She realizes she was wrong. She does? And she told me I'd never see Austin again. She was furious. You know how she has a temper. That's not what she meant. What did she mean, Hugh? What does she mean when she says all those cruel things? When she excludes me from your family and yet expects me to pay your bills? He was silent, twirling the salt cellar in his hands. I will not pay, Hugh, I said softly but firmly. Not the arrears, not future payments. This story is over. But what are we to do? There were tears in his eyes. Mom, we'll be evicted. We'll end up on the street. No, not on the street. You can rent an apartment like millions of people do. You can move into a smaller house with a more affordable mortgage. You can finally start living within your means instead of pretending to be rich at my expense. Are you really that cruel? He looked at me in disbelief. Are you really going to let your only son lose his home? And are you really so cruel that you let your wife tell your own mother, you're not invited to Christmas? And you didn't come to see me? You didn't even call me? We looked at each other across the table, and I saw more than resentment or disappointment in his eyes. I saw incomprehension. He genuinely didn't understand why I was doing this. I'm sorry, Hugh, I said at last. But you made that choice when you decided that I was good enough to pay your bills, but not good enough to be part of your family. He stood up, staggering like a drunk. You're going to regret this, he said quietly. When we lose the house, when Austin cries at night remembering his room, you'll regret it. Maybe, I agreed. But you'll also regret the way you treated your mother, for taking my help for granted, for not appreciating my feelings. He headed for the door. He turned around on the threshold. You know, Dad was right about you. He always said that underneath that soft shell there was a core of steel, only I didn't think that Rod would ever turn on me. With those words, he walked out, slamming the door loudly. I was left sitting at the kitchen table, feeling a strange mixture of pain and relief. Pain, because my only son had just walked out of my house, possibly forever. A relief, because I had finally done the right thing by protecting myself from people who used me. Kenneth did talk often about my steel rod, about the inner strength that allowed me to cope, to make tough decisions, to move forward when others gave up. That strength helped me through his death, helped me build a new life alone, and now it was helping me stand up for my dignity, even if the cost was the loss of my relationship with my son. Spring comes early in Cathedral City. Already in early March, the maple trees outside my window are covered with tender greens, and the first crocuses, purple, yellow, white, are blooming in the garden. I love this time of year, a time of renewal, freshness, new beginnings. But this year's spring brought more than flowers and warm days. It brought the final breakup with my son and his family. It was exactly as Hugh had predicted. The bank did not enter into their situation. And why should they? They had accumulated a lot of arrears over the past year, and my stopping payments was the last straw. On February 28th, they received an official eviction notice. They had to vacate the house by March 15th. I didn't hear about it from Hugh. He'd stopped contacting me after the last time I'd seen him. I got a call from Marjorie, an old friend of mine who lived in the same neighborhood as they did. Elspeth, darling, do you know what's happening to Hugh's house? Her voice sounded worried. A bank representative was there today with some kind of official notice. I saw him come in while I was walking my dog. I sighed. Yes, Marjorie, I know. They're having trouble with the mortgage. Oh my God. What a shame. Such a beautiful house. Such a wonderful family. She didn't know the whole story. She didn't know that I was the one who'd been paying their mortgage for the last year. That I was the one who stopped making payments after I was dropped from the family circle. Yeah, that's too bad, was all I said. Maybe you could help them, Marjorie suggested. I know you have good savings, and you've always been so generous to Hugh. I've helped before, I replied. I can't do it anymore. Marjorie must have caught something in my voice because she didn't pursue the subject. We talked some more about gardening, about her new dog, about the symphony orchestra concert we were going to go to together. After the conversation, I sat in my chair for a long time, looking at Kenneth's picture on the mantelpiece. What would he say about all this? Would he approve of my decision or disapprove? Kenneth had always been a pragmatist, but also had a soft heart, especially when it came to Hugh. You did the right thing, Els. I could almost hear his voice. You can't let a man sit on your neck, even if it's your own son. On March 12th, I saw a moving truck outside their house. I wasn't driving by on purpose. I was just returning from a client, and the route took me through their neighborhood. Two men were moving furniture out, loading boxes. Hugh stood in the driveway, watching the process. He looked gaunt, aged. I slowed the car down but didn't stop. He looked up, our eyes met for a moment, and I saw such pure, unadulterated hatred in his eyes that I shuddered. My son had never looked at me like that before. I drove past, feeling my heart clench. Part of me wanted to stop, to get out, to hug him, to tell him that everything would be okay, that I would help them find a new place to live, that I still loved him no matter what. But the other part, the more rational part, knew it was futile. Bridges had been burned, and not by me. A week later, I got a call from Perry's mother, Vivian. We'd never been particularly close. We'd only seen each other at family events, exchanged formal pleasantries. But now her voice sounded hostile. Elspeth, how could you? How could you bring your own son to this? They now live in a tiny apartment in the most disadvantaged neighborhood. Austin is afraid to go outside. Hello, Vivian, I said calmly. I understand your concern, but this is between me and my son. They told me everything, she continued, not listening. How you suddenly stopped paying their mortgage even though you promised to help. How you abandoned them to their fate over some petty grudge. A petty grudge? I could feel my anger rising. They cut me out of their lives, Vivian. Your daughter said to my face, "You're not invited to Christmas. We want to spend it with just our family." And I spent a year paying their mortgage so they could live in a house they clearly couldn't afford. So what if they weren't invited to one holiday? She snorted. That's no reason to deprive them of a roof over their heads. I didn't put a roof over anyone's head, Vivian. I just stopped paying other people's bills, like any normal person would do. They're your family, she exclaimed. Don't you realize that family is more important than money? That's what I've been trying to tell them all last year. But they didn't seem to see it that way. You. She was choking on her anger. You know what? Perry's right about you. You're an angry, vindictive old woman who only thinks about herself. If you called just to insult me, Vivian, then I guess we're done talking. Wait, she changed her tone. Look, I get that you're offended. But think about Austin. It's not his fault. He loves you. He misses you. The mention of a grandson hurt my heart. If Austin misses you, why don't you bring him to visit me? You know the state he's in. He's too proud to come to you after everything that's happened. Am I not proud enough to come to them after all they've told me? I asked quietly. Vivian sighed. Elspeth, they're in a desperate situation right now. They had to sell almost all their furniture to put a deposit down on the apartment. Perry finally got a job as a cashier at the supermarket, but her paycheck is barely enough to eat. Hugh works overtime, but still they could barely make ends meet. I didn't say anything. What could I say? That I felt sorry for them? Yes, I felt sorry, especially for Austin, but I couldn't let them back into my life only to have them use me as an ATM machine again. If you want to help them, Vivian, why don't you pay their rent yourself? I finally asked. Yeah, Robert and I are retired, you know. We don't have that kind of money. So you think I should give them my money, but I'm not ready to do the same? She didn't say anything. Then she said more reservedly, just think about it, Elspeth. They're your family, no matter what. After that conversation, I couldn't calm down for a long time. I wondered if I had done the right thing. Had I been too cruel to them? But then I remembered Perry's words, her scornful look, Hugh's indifference to my feelings, and realized that I had no other choice. At the end of March, I got a letter from my lawyer. Hugh was suing me, claiming that I had broken my verbal commitment to pay their mortgage, resulting in the loss of their home and moral distress. He was demanding compensation in the amount of $100,000. I was shocked. My own son was suing me for money. It was the last thing I expected. I turned to my longtime acquaintance, Leonard Ashe, an experienced lawyer. He scrutinized the documents and reassured me, Elspeth, this lawsuit has no prospects. First, you had no written agreement to pay the mortgage. Secondly, even if there was a verbal commitment, you have been fulfilling it for a year, which already exceeds any reasonable expectations. Third, your son is an adult, able-bodied person who has made his own commitment to the mortgage. You are not responsible for his financial decisions. But he claims that I promised. A mother's promise to help her son through a difficult situation is not a legally binding contract, Elspeth. The court understands that. Besides, there's evidence that they didn't save much money while you were helping them. New car, expensive vacations. It'll all be taken into account. Leonard was right. A month later, a preliminary hearing was held, at which the judge effectively dismissed the suit, advising Hugh and his lawyer not to waste court time on family squabbles. Hugh looked depressed and angry. He didn't even look in my direction as we left the courtroom. And then summer came, hot, dry, with cloudless skies and the smell of the jasmine I'd planted in the garden last year. I continued working with my clients, seeing friends, going to concerts. Life went on, but without Hugh, Perry, and Austin, there was a void that nothing could fill. Sometimes, as I drove past Austin's school, I slowed down, hoping to see his blonde head among the other kids. But I never saw him or Hugh or Perry. It was as if they had disappeared from town. I learned from Marjorie that they do rent a small apartment in River End, not the most affluent neighborhood in Cathedral City. Perry works as a cashier at a supermarket. Hugh is still in the warehouse, but now takes double shifts. Austin has been transferred to another school, closer to their new place. They look so miserable when I meet them at the store, Marjorie said, especially Perry. She's gaunt, pale, and her eyes are tired all the time. I nodded, but I didn't say anything. Part of me sympathized with them. No one deserves such a hard life. But another part of me realized that it was their choice to live beyond their means, relying on other people's help. And when that help stopped, I had to face reality. In July, I got a postcard from Austin. Childlike handwriting, uneven letters, a drawing in colored pencil, a house with a chimney, a tree, the sun. Dear Grandma, I miss you. Mom says you haven't been around much lately. Is everything okay? I want to show you my new drawings. Love, Austin. I held the card to my chest, my eyes welling up. My sweet grandson, so full of love and hope. Sometimes grown-up choices quietly echo in a child's world. He didn't understand why Grandma had suddenly disappeared from his life. I immediately wrote him back. The same card with a drawing. Garden, flowers, bench. Dear Austin, I miss you very much too. It's not true that I don't want to see you. I will always be glad to see you. You can come visit me anytime and I would love to see your drawings. I love you very, very much. Your grandmother. I sent the postcard to the address I had given Vivian in my letter. I don't know if Austin got it. There was no reply. In August, I turned 79. I didn't expect congratulations from Hugh and his family, and there really were none. I celebrated my birthday modestly, with a few close friends, at the restaurant where Kenneth and I went every year on that day. Marjorie gave me a beautiful scarf, Leonard a bottle of good wine, my former coworker Irene a book on gardening. We talked about music, about politics, about plans for the fall. No one mentioned Hugh or my family drama. Tactful people, they understood that this topic was painful for me. After dinner, already at home, I sat in my favorite chair for a long time, leafing through photo albums. Hugh at 5 on the carousel, happy, with ice cream smeared on his face. Hugh at 12, proudly showing off his first bicycle. Hugh at 18, in his graduation suit, with a smile as shy as his father's. Where and when did it all go wrong? When did my sweet, kind boy turn into a selfish, calculating man ready to sue his own mother? Was it my fault? Maybe I spoiled him too much as a child, indulged his every whim, didn't teach him the value of money and labor? Or was it Perry's influence? Her materialism, her desire for status and glitz. She always wanted more. A bigger house, a better car, more expensive things. And Hugh, weak-willed, wanting to please his wife, followed her, even if it meant living beyond her means. Or maybe it's just that people change. Growing up, moving away from their parents, starting to see them differently. Not as loving protectors, but as a resource to be utilized. Anyway, I had to accept reality as it was. My son and his family have severed all relationships with me. They blame me for their problems, hold me responsible for their misfortunes, and they will probably never forgive me for stopping funding them. With that thought, I closed the album and put it back on the shelf. The past couldn't be changed, but the future was still in my hands, and I wasn't going to spend the rest of my days in regret and self-abuse. In September, I decided to revitalize the garden. I planted new rose bushes, made an alpine slide, ordered garden furniture, a comfortable bench under an old apple tree, and a small table for outdoor tea parties. Working in the garden always calmed me down, helped me to put my thoughts in order. Once, while pruning roses, I heard a child's voice. "Grandma?" I turned around and saw Austin standing at the gate. He had grown over the months, lost weight, but his eyes. Hugh's eyes looked at me with the same childlike directness. "Austin!" I dropped the pruning shears and hurried over to him. "How did you get here?" "Grandma Vivian brought me." He pointed to a car parked a little farther down the street. Perry's mother was in it, watching us with a tense expression. "She said I could see you for a while." I hugged him, breathing in the familiar smell of his hair, now the scent of apple shampoo mixed with the smell of cheap laundry detergent. "It's so good to see you, honey. Let's go inside. I baked an apple pie this morning." He followed me, looking around curiously, as if he was seeing my house for the first time. Or maybe he'd just forgotten what the place looked like. Kids are quick to forget. We sat in the kitchen, eating cake and drinking tea, with milk and sugar for him as he liked it. Austin talked about his new school, about the friends he'd made, about the art class he went to after school. "I also learned to play the piano," he said proudly. "There's a music class at our school, and the teacher says I have a knack for it." "That's wonderful, dear," I smiled. "Your grandfather loved music too. He played the guitar, you know." "Did he?" Austin's eyes widened. "Do you have his guitar?" "Yeah, it's in the attic. But it's too big for you right now. Maybe when you're older." I didn't finish the sentence. Who knows if I'll see him again after this visit. "What about Mom and Dad?" I asked cautiously. Austin shrugged. "They're fine. Dad works a lot. I don't see him much. And Mom," he hesitated. "Mom gets sad a lot. And she fights with Dad. They think I can't hear, but I can hear everything through the wall." My heart ached. Poor boy having to listen to his parents fight. "What are they fighting about?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "About money. Always about money. Mom says Dad should get a better job, and Dad says Mom spends too much. And then they talk about you." He stopped talking, looking at me with concern. "What do they say about me, Austin?" "Bad things," he whispered. "Mom says you're mean and selfish, and Dad says you betrayed us, but I don't believe them," he added hastily. "I know you're good." I felt a lump come to my throat. I reached out and stroked his cheek. Thank you, sweetie. You know, adults sometimes say hurtful things when they're upset or angry. It doesn't mean they really mean it. Then why don't you come over anymore? He asked. Why don't we come to your house for Christmas like we used to? How do you explain complicated adult relationships to a 6-year-old? How do you tell him about betrayal, about being used, about bitter words that can't be taken back? Sometimes adults fight, Austin, I said gently, and they need time to cool down and make up. But I'll always love you, no matter what happens. And you can always come visit me if you want to. He nodded, but there was still worry in his eyes. Children sense tension between adults, even if they don't understand why. An hour later, Vivian came to pick him up. She looked uncomfortable, avoided looking me in the eye. Thank you for letting him visit you, she said quietly. He really missed you. He can come anytime he wants, I replied. I will always be happy to see him. She nodded but didn't say anything. I realized that this visit was probably her initiative, not Hugh's or Perry's, and that they would probably be unhappy to hear about it. After seeing them off, I returned to the garden. I continued pruning the roses, but my thoughts were far away. I thought about my son and his wife, about their new difficult life, about how things might have turned out differently if they had just appreciated me for more than just my money. In the evening, I sat on the new bench under the apple tree for a long time, looking up at the stars streaking across the darkening sky. The September air was fresh, smelling of ripe apples and fading flowers. I felt a strange mix of emotions, sorry that things had turned out this way, but also relieved that I no longer had to be a financial support for people who didn't value me as a person. The bitterness of losing touch with my son and grandson, but also the peace of mind of knowing that I did the right thing in protecting my dignity. Maybe someday Hugh will realize that I didn't do it out of revenge or greed. That money was never more important to me than a relationship. That I just wanted to be a part of their lives, their family, not as an ATM, but as a loving mother and grandmother. And in the meantime, I had my life, my friends, my job, my garden, my memories of Kenneth and the happy years we spent together, my plans for the future, maybe not what I had envisioned before, but still full of possibilities. After all, 79 years is not the end of the road. It's just another stage, another chapter in the book of life. And who knows what the next pages will say. With this thought, I got up from the bench and headed for the house. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day. A meeting with a client, lunch with Marjorie, an evening at the symphony orchestra. Life went on no matter what. And maybe one day it would bring Hugh to my doorstep again, not with demands or accusations, but with a sincere desire to rebuild what had been destroyed. And then I will meet him with an open heart, ready to forgive but not to forget. In the meantime, I will live my life with dignity, peace, and the realization of my own value. A life where there is no room for exploitation or disrespect. A life that I deserve after all these years of caring for others. And if Hugh ever realizes that, well, my door will always be open to him, but on different terms. On terms of mutual respect and love, not financial dependence. Because a real family is not about takers. It is those who know how to give and receive with gratitude. Those who appreciate not only material help, but the very possibility to be near each other, to share joys and sorrows, to be a part of each other's life. And if Hugh ever realizes this simple truth, perhaps our story will continue. And if not, well, I've done all I can. And now I can move on with a clear conscience and a peaceful heart.